G'day and welcome back to another Dbz Dokkan battle video. In this video we are going to be taking a look at the brand new Extreme Z area that has come out for Dbz Dokkan Battle Global. So this new Extreme Z area basically EZAs all of the brand new units, well not brand new, but all of the basically the heroes units that have released over the years. So these are like the free-to-play heroes units. So you've got units like Arm, you've got units like Demon God Salsa, you've got base form Cumber, and yeah, there's limited characters for this. There are some summonable ones, so if you have those, use them, but I will be completing the entire event free-to-play. So I'll be using only free-to-play units that you get from the events, and yeah, pretty straightforward stuff. Obviously, as like a preface to this, you don't have to do it free to play, so really don't if you don't have to. Like if you've got summonable units, use them. Another way also, these free to play units will help you with the Extreme Z battle for Dragon Ball Heroes units, which I'll leave in the top right hand corner. So there's quite a few nice synergies between all these units. Obviously, a lot of them are getting some pretty nice EZAs. We'll get to take a look at how good those EZAs are, but generally speaking, they all look pretty decent. I would say for the most part, all of them look not just serviceable, but pretty damn good. And I think they're all really nice, at least for me. Like, obviously, some people don't like to work on free-to-play units, but yeah, I do. And one thing I will mention is that there are, of course, some stones to get here. There's 15 stones in total, because there's quite a few units that are awakening here. So there's 5 stages, and each stage has 2 difficulties, and then you've got like a whole bunch of missions as well. So you actually have a bit more, I think, than the 5 stones, because so you've got 1 stone for a mission for each character, and you've got 2 stones for each stage for each character. So yeah, that's pretty much it in terms of the event. It's pretty straightforward. If you've done an Extreme Z area, you shouldn't really openly struggle with this in any way, shape or form. One thing I will suggest is if you are lacking for heroes units, if you're not the type of person to summon, but you still want to Extreme Z awaken these units, then I would suggest that you pick up the free-to-play Int Lags. She's going to help you out quite a bit, and she is pretty solid. So I would suggest picking her up. I think she's a great addition, and I think overall, obviously, she helps you out quite a bit. And like I mentioned before, there are missions. Most of them have to do with completing the event 7 times or so, which is pretty straightforward and pretty easy. But yeah, basically simple stuff. We're going to be taking on each stage with only free-to-play units, so you can see the team, very free-to-play friendly, entirely free-to-play. Use either lags at first, but I would suggest using Demon Goddess Putine. Reason being is when she EZA, she's going to have a 77% lead, so I would use her as my lead. There will be some stages you struggle with. The second stage, so the second stage, like the number 2, where you get the medals for arms, that one is a little bit difficult because the friend lead that they give you is actually it's either the second or third stage, but it's actually the strength Great Saiyaman 4. And that can cause you quite a few problems. Main reason being is a lot of the free-to-play heroes units are actually extreme units. Arms is extreme, Cumber is extreme, Putine is extreme, Salsa is extreme, and Lags is extreme. So yeah, it is pretty like extreme heavy, obviously. So having a super lead is not really the best, and he only leads youth. So it's kind of like a little bit of, not a poke in the eye per se, but it's probably the most inconvenient stage, because if you are doing it with only free-to-play units, it is a little bit hindering, I want to say, because you can only really use so many extreme units, and it does cause you quite a few problems overall. So I would say there is definitely a little bit of a inconvenience there. I don't know if they thought it out properly or whatever the situation is, but I think that's the most inconvenient stage. And it's because you don't have ki, you have very massively reduced stats, so it does cause some problems. Beyond that, obviously standard extreme Z area protocol. So as you saw there, we got a question mark. So question marks can randomly spawn, and question marks can give you additional medals. So question marks can give you, additional copies of either the left or right path of medal. So what I always like to do is I always like to alternate. So I like to go down the left and then down the right. That way if I get a question mark, I can kind of adjust. In terms of the stages, obviously the first difficulty will drop bronze medals on the left hand side, silver medals on the right hand side, and then on the second difficulty, gold drops on the left and rainbow drops on the right. You have to run each stage 6 times. So you have to run the first difficulty 6 times, 3 on the left, 3 on the right. You're going to have to run the second difficulty 6 times, 3 on the left, 3 on the right. Obviously, if you get a question mark, that's going to basically remove a run. So for example, if I get a question mark on the first stage, that means I'm only going to have to run it 5 times in total, and on the second stage, vice versa. First stage costs 12 stamina, second stage costs 25 stamina. And yeah, that's pretty much everything you need to know. Honestly speaking, it's just a very big Extreme Z area, but the process is very much the same. When we look here, like I say, barring the stage where we've got a super class lead for a predominantly extreme free-to-play team, it's really not too bad. Generally speaking, we don't have that bad a time here. It's just a little bit slow. More for obviously, it's me technically hindering myself by using free-to-play units, but it is also kind of one of those things where you're trying to show that it can be done essentially with free-to-play units. So yeah, but basically, if I'm honest, all looks pretty good. You should be doing this Extreme Z area. It's even not just about the free-to-play units per se, but it's more just about the stones. And you always want to have versatility. You never know when they're going to release a Dragon Ball Heroes SBR or ESBR or anything that needs them. And they still are pretty good units. Obviously, some of them are very dependent on being on Heroes teams. Some of them aren't. So it could be very interesting. And they still have great synergy. I think a lot of them are actually really well done. So it'll be interesting to see. Now that we kind of covered the basics of the entire event, we're going to take a look at the individual units. So we'll start taking a look at all of the units. I think we'll start with my personal favorite, which is Demon Goddess Poutine. I just think she was already a pretty nice unit, and I think that the EZA is just a nice little kind of sprinkle on top of her kit. So she gets an upgraded leader skill, goes from 50% to 77%. She has a high chance of stunning the enemy on her super attack as well. She now has attack and defense of 150 compared to 120%. She gets an additional 15% per crossover ally instead of 12. She now gets an additional 70% attack and has a medium chance of performing a critical hit when the target is stunned or their super attack is sealed. And she has crossover category support, which is all pretty good. She also lowers the attacked enemy's defense and attack by 20% for 2 turns and seals their super attack for 2 turns, which is pretty good, honestly speaking. So she seals, she stuns, she debuffs. She's really good on a crossover team. Obviously she's way more crossover orientated, but she is a crossover support. and I think overall she looks really solid. The increase in stats is also super nice for her, raising that, defense from 7,200 to 8,699, which is a pretty sizable increase. It's around an 18% increase, which I think overall is pretty good. Her link set is okay. She does tend to link a lot better with Toa units, or with some of the crossover girls, like the Robalus and the units like that. And she is a little bit limited in terms of category, but that tends to happen, especially with the extreme units. They are a little bit limited. I think overall she's still pretty solid, and I personally think she's really great. I like her kit. I like the fact that she's a support, and I think she's pretty strong. She was pretty strong before. Under the right conditions, she could look really impressive, and I think that's just kind of continued with her EZA. The next one we'll cover is Demon God Salsa. Pretty interesting unit, personally speaking. He was kind of objectively terrible when he came out, let alone like straight away, but he looks a lot better. So he also improved leader skill from 55% crossover to 77%. He greatly raises defense for one turn previously. Now he raises both attack and defense. He now just has flat attack and defense of 100% instead of 60. He also has 3 ki, which I think personally he did need like quite a bit. He then has attack and defense plus 20% up to 80% per crossover category unit, and he has evasion plus 15% per crossover unit as well, up to 45%. So you can almost have 50% evasion, which is really solid. Then he has an additional chance of evading enemies' attacks, plus 5% per existing enemy. So even when facing one enemy, he has 50% evasion, which is pretty good. And then plus an additional attack of 20% and defense of 10% with each attack evaded, up to a maximum of 60% and 30% respectively. So pretty nice stuff. I think his link set's probably one of the weirder ones with Master of Magic. Always feels like a bit of a weird unit. Kind of links decently with like the Burra based units, because Master of Magic, Thirst for Conquest, Brainiacs is also there, which is decent. Overall, not a terrible link set, just a bit more of a niche one. But it's actually cool that he got a nice EZA. I think his obviously the older ones will always look more dramatic. I think his might be the best improvement of a unit's kit. When Salsa came out, he felt underwhelming. Free-to-play units, I'm not saying they're beastly when they come out, but when he came out, he felt very underwhelming. So, yeah. Before we talk about more units, obviously we're just going to skip ahead here. At this point, before you take on the second difficulty, I did, Extreme Z Awaken all my units to level 130. It's very important because not only did it increase my leader skills, but it did also partially improve their passives, and it also gave them more stats. And more stats is obviously always appreciated because it helps out. It improves your health, but it also improves their defense, the damage, everything like that. And yeah, that along with the passive improvement and the leader skill improvements, obviously just made everything a lot easier. So then, I obviously Extreme Z Awakened them to level 130. I made sure, to put some equipment on them as well, mainly life equipment and some dodge equipment. I usually do this just for Extreme Z areas. Otherwise, I don't usually traditionally end up using that gear. So I tend to put it on units just to give me a bit more health pool and obviously the odd chance of evasion. Beyond that, obviously lags cannot really be improved because she can't really be Extreme Z Awakened. So she's the only one you don't need to actively improve. But I would say you definitely, to make your time a lot easier, I would highly suggest that you Extreme Z Awaken units, because it is going to help you out. And quite frankly, not that it's needed, but yeah, it helps significantly. Let's put it that way. So anyway, to continue along, obviously Salsa I think had a great Extreme Z Awakening. Ahms also had a pretty nice one, so he just got basically augmented. So before he was, attack and defense of 50%, he's now attack and defense of 120. Same with the leader skill, 50% to 77%. He raises defense 1 turn, which is great now on his super attack. And yeah, pretty much the rest kind of remained the same. Artificial life form support, extreme class support. And then he got an additional attack of 30% when attacking, plus an additional defense of 30% with each attack received up to 150. And then he's got a high chance of stunning the attacked enemy. So that's pretty nice. The 30% kind of artificial life form support's good. But really the multiplicative defense is where things get a bit interesting for him. It's not that he's going to be ever like a tank 1 slot unit, but he could definitely be relatively tanky, or a bit more tanky than he first appears. He also lowers attack and defense still, which is great. I wish they would have made it greatly lowering attack and defense. I think lowering attack and defense is a super powerful ability, and it would have been nice to see him have that. Overall though, he's got a great link set, one of the few free-to-play units that's got big bad bosses. He's got Metamorphosis, which is super powerful, Fear and Faith, which is a great link, Shattering the Limit as well, Tough as Nails, and Loyalty. So he's got some pretty interesting link sets, I want to say, that I think lend to him being a pretty interesting choice across the board for most players. So Ahms' Extreme Z Awakening, I think, was pretty well done. Could have been changed just slightly with the greatly lowering, which I think is very important nowadays where units hit so hard. So having the ability to greatly lower them in SBR and ESBR, that extra 10-20% attack lowering especially, is super duper helpful in that content. So yeah, I would say that's maybe the only change, but the rest is really, really good. And obviously he looks a lot better because of it. So then we get to the 2 strength units. Obviously the first being Cumber. Now Cumber, I think very similar to Salsa, was kind of okay on release. I think he obviously is a stacking unit, so he's the Dragon Ball Heroes category, Ki +3 up to 77% from 50, which is always great. He raises attack and defense, so he is a stacking unit, which is obviously always nice. His Ki went from +2 to +3, attack and defense went from 50 to 150. He gives all extreme class allies attack and defense at 20% when attacking. He gains another 50% defense, and superclass enemies get debuffed by attack and defense of 30% after he receives an attack, which is pretty good, especially in SBR and ESBR. Could be a really interesting unit to run alongside the Cumber Grade 8. And he also launches an additional attack within the same turn after receiving an attack as the first attacker in turn. Now obviously the augmented stats, the augmented passive help him. He's not really a first slot unit. Obviously after he's stacked a little bit, he could very much well potentially be one. But the real nice thing about him is the fact that he debuffs the enemy after he's been attacked. So what could be really cool is you can stick him in the first slot. If he can get off his, get hit by just one enemy, obviously that's great. It can kind of increase the stats and also trigger the additional super. But in SBR and ESBR, it'll also debuff the opposition, which is fantastic if they are, of course, super class orientated. If they're not, then it's going to not be so great, but yeah. And then we have Great Saiyaman 4, a youth category lead, went from 50 to 77%, which is great. I think for the most part pretty good. And then he raises attack and defense, which he always did, so he is a stacking unit. They added lowering defense, not really certain why. He's got attack and defense of 120%, which is great. Superclass allies get Ki of 2 and defense of 30%. Youth category allies get attack of 30%. This has remained the same, very, very similar to Ahms and his support abilities. So yeah, all really solid. And then we also have, what's interesting here is plus an additional defense of 30% when attacking, chance of performing a crit plus 10% with each attack performed, and a high chance of launching an additional super attack. So what makes him interesting is obviously he's a stacker, but he's a stacker that's got crit and additional built into his passive. So that means basically you can build him full additional. If you get lucky and get 2 supers in his first turn, he basically goes to 30% crit, which is pretty good. Yeah, to be honest, it's really pretty solid. So going full additional on him, really good. The increased stats also obviously help him out with his stacking. Yeah, I think personally speaking, he looks the most interesting. Obviously, stackers are not always necessarily good, if that makes sense. You know, it can be a little bit like dependent on how quickly they stack, especially in certain events like Red Zone and that. You know, it's not like units can just stack forever. But basically, yeah, he looks really good, and because of that stacking, you know, you do at least have the ability for him to scale quite well into later events. I think, you know, if we look at, for example, LGEGT, Legendary Vegeta event, all of these events, I think he looks pretty good. And so, yeah, he'll be an interesting option for those, for sure. And I think overall he'll be a pretty interesting option for everyone, no matter what team they're looking to run. So, yeah, for me, having looked at all the units and looked at all the options, I think all of them are pretty good. I think it's going to be interesting to see how good they are. Obviously, you know, they're not going to be insane. Yeah, they're not going to be absolutely crazy, but they could still be very interesting. I think for the most part, I'm looking forward to how well they do. It's always nice to see free-to-play units get augmented, especially with things like free-to-play runs. You know, for the time travelers category is great. The DD heroes, you've got some options here for the Realm of the Gods, which is cool. You've got some options here for Pepe Gals. You've got some options here for Giant Ape Form, etc. So really cool to get these kind of units and to get this little bits of augmentation, which I think is always good. Obviously, it requires other crossover units, some of them more than others. Like if you look at Ahms or you look at Great Saiyaman 4, they don't really require others, but hey, it is what it is. But yeah, that's it from me. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time. Bye.